Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the biggest show on Earth, the biggest story never told on Earth, and you're going to get it right here. The Vatican-led New World Order rules, and most people don't even know what the hell I'm talking about. Greg Anthony here, and isn't it amazing when you do this story and people really start reading it, they're hooked. There's too much factual evidence, folks. Greg Anthony on the Investigative Journal. I've given you a lot over the years. There's too much factual evidence, folks, that anyone can't walk away when they do some due diligence and study this stuff. Realize what's going on in America. Now, the other day, I did a story on Jesuit socialism, and Congresswoman, whatever her name is, OAC Cortez, and her push for socialism in America. Since then, she's had some troubles. She's been outed as a hypocrite, and she's facing some campaign violations, possibly, involving millions of dollars that she funneled into an LLC, and it gets a little technical, but basically, campaign violations are difficult to prove, and you know why? They're made up by the people who run the campaigns. So anyway, she's a hypocrite. She flies around in jets. She takes Uber to the tune of $30,000 to her office instead of taking the subway. And she's been caught eating hamburgers when she tells you and me we can't have 3 of them in a day. I'll eat what I want, senora or senorita. But listen to me. This story is interesting because when I did Jesuit socialism, I factually traced the origins of socialism, folks. What does socialism lead to? Communism. Okay? And I traced it to the Jesuits back during the Paraguay reductions in the 1600s. And if you work your way forward, you'll see the connections between the Jesuits and Marxism, the Jesuits and Karl Marx, the Jesuits and Joseph Stalin, the Jesuits and Hitler, and the Jesuits now with the Democratic Socialist Party in America. That's what they're calling themselves. Now, my point of view is this. I don't hold much hope out for people who are going to make America great again, and there's a whole hell of a lot of them. And I really, if I had my druthers, I side with a sovereign country. I like countries, forming their own borders, paving a way for their citizenry to work hard and do good things. And socialism basically is just the opposite. And what I'm getting at, why it's going to succeed in America, is because most of the people, and we're going to be very general here, that support it are young. And why have they been indoctrinated into believing this? And I tried to think about that, and I say, well, because it's Jesuitism in the universities and education. Jesuit education. And when you're told the country sucks, when you're told you have no future, when you can't buy a house, when you can't do these things, you're told all these things. The next thing you do is you play the victim, which is really prevalent today in our society. Victimization. It's great to be a victim, even if you lie about it. As the case of our good friend over in Hollywood, who staged a hoax that Trump supporters beat him up and wanted to hang him in Chicago, Mr. Smollett, from the great show Empire. So he created a hoax, and he's still a victim. Can you believe that? And victimization, it's a way of saying, listen, we're going to come and help you victims in your country. The state will pay for everything. Don't worry about it. And it's going to work. It's going to appeal. Maybe not in our lifetime, us older people, but for you younger people, it is really the future. So get used to it. America, you're seeing it right now. The media is abuzz, even on the right and the left, both sides. And all you're hearing is this freshman congresswoman. Then you got a Muslim congresswoman in there spreading anti-Semitic statements saying to Trump, you MFer. Look, I don't care if you like Trump or not. If you're a congresswoman or a congressman, you just don't publicly say those things. Say it in the shower. Say it to you, when you're home alone or driving in your car. But listen, if you don't like the man, what do you do as a congresswoman? That's not even the tip of the iceberg with this Muslim young woman that's in Congress now from the great state of Minnesota. Why is she there? Because there's a Muslim population in Minnesota from Somalia, I guess. And basically it's the beginnings of hearing publicly Sharia law. And she is now denigrating Jews, which hurts me tremendously because my mother was Jewish, lost a lot of people in the Holocaust, and I come from Poland. So, come on. If anybody's been persecuted in this world, it's the Polish people if you read the centuries of history, just where they're physically located. And, you don't see me crying for anything. I came to America, my family came to America for one reason, and that was to get a better life, work hard, and not ask the government for jack shit. And it's just the opposite now. Right? People are coming here with another idea, and that is, when my grandfather came here, there wasn't Medicare for all. He didn't have health insurance. He didn't have anything. He had to work for every penny and dime he had, and he was very prosperous. Now, these people that come in here now, they're here to get on the dole and to get all these benefits and maybe find a job. Now, I'm not just blaming these people because they're being pushed out by the Jesuit socialists in Central and Latin America. It's kind of like a pot overflowing. They got to come this way now, It's bubbling over and going up north. But here's the deal. I don't really blame them. Congress sucks. They're to blame. They are working with the Jesuits to make sure that our borders are invaded and this country changes its face within 50 years. And they don't do anything. And they're working with them. I also blame employers in this country, the rich guys, who really don't want this legal immigration to stop because it's cheap labor. But let me tell you something. This is not going to end. Trump is there as a figurehead. All you're going to hear for the next 2 years is investigations, investigations, investigations. You're never going to see Clinton, they're all questioning on the right. Will Hillary Clinton ever get, indicted? No. She should have been indicted 40 years ago with her killing husband. You ever see the Clinton hit list? How many murders they're responsible for, and nobody talks about it, and you say it in public, and it's like, oh, the only thing you're worried about is she broke her computer, and she smashed her hard drive and her phone into bits. She got rid of 33,000 emails. Why do you think they use 33? It's an occult number. They're shoving it in your face. Nothing's going to happen to her. Nothing's going to happen to Trump. And this is all a game. But in the meantime, you're seeing the beginnings in America publicly on the public stage of socialism. And it's going to be bought hook, line, and sinker by a majority of people in this country. If it doesn't happen in the next 10 years, it will in the next 20. And one of the other things they're doing, this Cortez, before I get onto this Muslim congresswoman, one of the other things they're doing is they're going around the schools, she's going around the schools and some of her acolytes, indoctrinating these young kids, telling them that they got to get on the Green New Deal, they got to get rid of every cars and all this stuff because the world's going to end in 10 years or 12 years. And you know what? Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, all the old guard, they're behind this. They're just bringing up these young kids to introduce what is the future of America and let them take the heat. And they will play a game like they're against it. We're going to be moderates. They're not. Now, this congresswoman isn't a moderate Muslim either. And if you've gone back to my shows, you'll see what happens when Muslims immigrate to a country and then their numbers grow. When they come and their numbers are low, they're like sheep. Just like the Vatican was when they first got to America. Oh, we're just here. We're moderate. where you just love to be here. They're going to play this game like they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. They use this idea of freedom of religion to come here and say, we can worship. Sure, go ahead. But what is your intention? Now, the intention is when a Muslim population grows and it gets the percentages move higher and higher and higher, they get more militant, to the point where when it's 70, 80, 90%, 100% Muslim, there are no rights. It's Sharia law. Just like it is in certain sections of Europe now, Sweden, Norway, other countries, France, you'll see it in Italy, pockets of Muslims where police are not allowed to go into, no-go zones. And that's because Sharia law is practiced there. And at this time, you're going to see these Muslims go out into the public and start harassing Westerners for what? Having a beer? For women wearing a dress? For not covering their head? And on and on and on. But once they have numbers, you can bet Sharia law will be imposed and there'll be no rights. Now, whether America ever succumbs to that is a question that you can think of yourself. But listen, we are allowing terrorism here to function. The Jesuits and the United States government created terrorism as another enemy after the Cold War ended. And I'm going to prove it to you right in this moment. Okay. We have this congresswoman who's really spouting off anti-Semitic language, saying the American government shouldn't be paying money, be in the pocket of Israel and all these criminals, and they're responsible. The Jews did it. The Jews did everything. And it's a typical Jesuit ploy. When you attack the Jesuits for, for evils, they blame the Jews. Now, I'm going to admit that there are certain papal court Jews that are controlled by the Vatican and the Jesuits that run the Knesset, etc., but a majority of the people are not under that. Just like a majority of Americans are not globalists, okay, if they really understood what's going on. Excuse me. But anyway, so we have this Muslim congresswoman now spouting off, saying all these crazy things. She should have been censured and taken off the Foreign Affairs Committee like that. But they're even having a hard time mentioning her name in the resolution passed that's going to censure her words. So it's a bunch of crap. And the reason that they're fomenting and wanting you to hear this Muslim message is because they allow terrorism to function and grow in America. They've been doing it for years. And let me give you an example. And we're going to talk about every president here from Bill Clinton on up. So before 1992, in Europe, in the early 70s and 80s, there was a man by the name of Fethullah Gulen. And if you look him up, you'll find him quite interesting, and I'll explain him to you in a minute. Now, Gulen was from Turkey, and he's an imam. He's a top dog in the Muslim faith, right? Now, in Turkey and other European countries, prior to his arrival in America, he was fomenting radical Islam. This is documented. In European countries such as Norway, for one, as well as his home country, Turkey. And when it got very hot and heated for him, but in Europe, and when he had sown the seeds of radical Islam all over the place, millions and millions of euros and dollars, institutions that he founded, etc., even militant organizations, with the intent of bringing Sharia law to Western civilization. When things were getting rough for him, he hightailed it out of Europe and out of Turkey, and on the coattails of Bill and Hillary Clinton, entered America in asylum, seeking asylum, and given asylum because he was being persecuted. That gives you the first hint where the Clintons really lie and where our government lies today. So Gulen is allowed into America, given a palatial residence in the Pocono Mountains, given millions of dollars of taxpayer money to open up moderate Islamic schools to teach Americans that Islam isn't as bad as what they say it is. We're moderates. We want to preserve our religion, and America gives us the right to do that here. And side by side, you Christians and Jews and everyone, we will not bother you. That's the shtick that Gulen gives, and the presidents and everyone who keeps him here gives. However, he is not a moderate. He's a radical Islamist teaching that. The schools and if the number of schools he's created and the amount of millions of taxpayer dollars he's already gotten since the 90s is astronomical. And if the government was really keen and really true in getting terrorism out of America, they would get rid of Fethullah Gulen first. But they don't. And they know what's going on. So, let's move forward. Gulen goes almost undetected for years because of 9/11. Now, when the Bush was in office, Gulen should have been the first one to be kicked out of here, right? But he wasn't, because everyone was focused on the people that they created to take the heat on this, the three Muslims and Osama bin Laden and all those characters, when really America had already been infiltrated, and they did it. Now, what did they do? Prior to 9/11, an attorney that works at Georgetown Jesuit University had already written, he was the head writer of the Patriot Act, 300 pages, to take away your rights, but allowing people like Fethullah Gulen and radical Islam to stay here. So, during the next 5, 6, 7 years, nothing was more prevalent in the news than 9/11, the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, and everything else regarding let's get rid of terrorism, we got to fight terrorism. Then comes along Obama and ISIS and all of these now groups that, you've heard about for years. But at the same time, Obama did nothing. Why would he? He's a Muslim sympathist. That's what he was put there for. Did you see his whole idea was to, apologize for America and give the Iranians $150 billion in cold hard cash. And they're a terrorist group that says hate America. So what is he all about? Of course, Gulen stays here. But then the interesting story comes with Trump. Now, many of you who think that Trump is on the level, really wants to make America great, sure, on the surface he's doing some things, but his real intention is much different. Because in the end, the globalists are going to win. Now here's what's happening. And an event erupted in Turkey where the president of Turkey, this was just recent in the last couple of years, the president of Turkey, was in the midst of a coup where he could have been killed. That's Mr. Erdogan. Now, the reason this coup was going on was because of the seeds that this man, Fethullah Gulen, had sown in that country for years, creating a radical Islamic group to overthrow the government of Turkey, which is very important to the stabilization of the West. It's kind of like the firewall between the East and the West, because Turkey is the more democratic Islamic country than the world has ever known. That's why we have our military bases there, etc. But all of a sudden you hear this coup with with Erdogan, and the reports were that he was within 10 minutes of losing his life. He got on a jet, he asked for asylum in Germany, and she turned him down, the chancellor there. And he came back, finally, when things calmed down. And his first claim was this, because Americans were trying to get one American prisoner out of Turkey. So Erdogan said to President Trump in the State Department, give me Fethullah Gulen to stand trial for what he did in this coup for sowing the seeds of a radical group that wants to overthrow the Turkish government, and I'll release your prisoner. Now, this would be a perfect opportunity for Trump and his State Department to set the record straight. Yes, Fethullah Gulen's been collecting tax money to spread radical Islam in America. Look what he did in Turkey. Look what he did in the other European countries, if they bothered to look. But I'm sure he had CIA help there. Guess what happens? You heard that story for maybe a couple days, and then you heard, I don't know who was in control of the State Department at the time, say, we are looking into the matter. Nothing ever happened. They never released him, and they never will. So if you people who think Trump is on your side, you're very wrong. Because this is a watershed example of why he isn't. And all you heard in the media was that Erdogan, the president of Turkey, was the bad guy. Because look what he's doing to his people now. He's putting generals in jail. Well, yeah, the ones that wanted to overthrow the Turkish government. So the Americans think that Erdogan was the bad guy. And of course they sided with their government. And there wasn't even much noise made about Gulen at all, outside of a couple days in the news. They want him. But he's a moderate imam who had to flee for his life from the evils of this man. So it's the same old story. What's black is white, and what's white is black. But I realize, by being in Europe, I remember Gulen when I was there. And I remember articles in foreign newspapers that were talking about what he was doing and the money he was collecting. And at the time, I didn't know that perhaps the CIA would be behind it or the American government. But you better believe that's what's going on. And check out this man. It's G-U-L-E-N, Fethullah. Not Petula Clark, who did Downtown, but Fethullah Gulen, okay? And it'll give you an idea of why I can say that Trump, whether he says he wears a MAGA hat or not, is a Jesuit socialist at heart, just as the other people on the other side of the aisle are. But they can't get their way unless they play this Hegelian dialectic, one group fighting the other. And in the midst of this, they're seeing how many people support a sovereign America and how many people support globalism. And I think what they're seeing is very plain, that they'll have no problem bringing it in. It's just going to take a little time, and time is what they have. Unfortunately, time isn't what a lot of people have, especially people that really do want to keep America great. The numbers are dwindling, along with our World War II veterans, our Vietnam veterans, along with all of the groups of people that would never... Look, when I grew up, I was an idealist. In fact, a liberal many times, because I didn't understand this game they played. But never in my wildest dreams, no matter what I thought America was doing wrong, did I ever think that socialism was an answer to anybody's problems, or communism. For as flawed as America could be, it is still, on paper, without the criminals running it, a pretty darn good system. And I always felt that it could be improved if we get better people involved. But unfortunately, I didn't realize the power and strength of the Vatican-led New World Order. The power and strength that they have now basically controlled most every aspect of your life without you even knowing it. And that's exactly what one of the Jesuit generals said years ago. He said, I control China, I control this, I control that, right here from Borgo Santo Spirito Cinque in Rome without anybody knowing about it. Well, you're going to know about it if you come back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app, for all of your mobile devices. Streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Visit crosstheborder.org, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn, the Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, folks, that was pretty quick. We're back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal. And, you know, if I would have thought, 20 years ago when I was thinking about this, and I said to myself, wow, now that it all makes sense, how are they going to destroy or take over America? And I was thinking there's going to be a big war. You never know. But I never really, until recently, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, thought they're going to do it without firing a shot, keeping people preoccupied, and take it over like they do other countries. Oh, there might be a few skirmishes, civil war here or there. But maybe that's the way it'll happen. My problem has always been this. Please don't ruin baseball season. I mean, if you have a socialist country, who are we going to get to play baseball? You think these guys? Bryce Harper, one of the greatest baseball players of our time, just signed a 13-year, $330 million contract. Do you think he's going to play for peanuts? What kind of players would we get? I don't want to watch a fat old guy go and play third base because it's a communal thing. And then, well, how are they going to get to their games if we don't have any airplanes? The Cubs are playing tomorrow in L.A. and they're in New York today. Hey, that's going to delay the game by a few days. They'll never get it done. You don't ruin my baseball. Take over the country, create globalism, do what the hell you want. Because we can't stop you anyway, right? But don't ruin baseball. And I'm going to tell you this. These players are spoiled. The average baseball salary, is over $1 million. And these guys are making 10, 12, 15, 20 million a year. The owners are going to the bank. The TV contracts. Oh, wow. Hot dogs cost $10. Beer, $5. I mean, that's a capitalist country. What would baseball look like in a socialist country? First of all, there wouldn't be any paper or plastic cups at the games. Second of all, there wouldn't be any use of wooden bats because it's destroying our great Earth. They call it a planet, I call it a plane. Secondly, the uniforms. Oh, they got to change those. What kind? I don't know. No polyester, all cotton, but cotton shrinks. And so after you wash it once, these guys aren't going to be able to move. What else? Oh, no, you can't use the white lime that make the base paths. So they won't know what's fair or foul anymore. Oh boy, what else is going to happen? Can you imagine? Transgender baseball. Oh no, the women have to play with the men. Title IX says so. No, it doesn't. Title IX doesn't have anything to do with women competing in a men's game. It just gives women equal opportunity and funding for their own sports. This is the way I read it. But they want to change everything. And, the poor umpires. The poor managers. No more swearing. No more arguing. Politically correct. You know, if you want to argue a call, write a note. But don't write it on paper. Put it on your digital text and then forward the email to the umpire and see what his response is. Boy, it's going to change the whole game, isn't it? But enough of that. They're going to get their way. Globalism will be here soon. And, my only regret is why don't you, I've always said this, when we were worried about World War III, I said, do it, get it over with. Okay, just do it. Why don't they quit playing games? Just get up there and say, hey, listen, Americans, this is not a republic. This is a dictatorship. We're just playing all these games of voting and doing all this stuff to appease you, to give you something to watch, to keep you excited about things. We're playing with you. But now it's over. We're going to have our country. You forget about it. And why don't you just do it, for Christ's sake, instead of talking, behind our backs and plotting and scheming. It's terrible. But anyway, enough of that. Because I did want to play something today that I found to end the hour. And this is called Communism, Biblical versus Jesuitical Communism. Jesuitical Communism. So it's about 22 minutes long, so we'll get most of it in. Not all. And there's some really good things. He puts a quote here by William Tyndale. No, that's his name. He calls himself William Tyndale. Maybe he changed it. He was a great biblical character in the old days. But there are many nice little quotes. He had 514 views. Not many. So let's see what he has to say. And as I always preface things, I say, what is a view? Does a person have to stay on 1 second, or does he have to listen to the whole thing? How many times do you click on a video and you just don't even look at it? That counts as a view. But did a person really view it? No. So we really don't know. Okay. Here we go. Communism. Biblical versus Jesuitical.
By Marx and Engels was written in 1848. It set forward a communist ideology that has grown synonymous with the term communism itself. But the reality of the matter is, there has always been two radically different visions of social economic philosophy, both of which are known as communism. The first kind of communism is based on true altruism, a willingness to think of others more highly than oneself, and a practice of the golden rule. The second kind of communism is a communism that subtracts God from the equation and seeks to find equality on its own self-made terms. This form of communism is self-serving and seeks to level the playing field through might equals right tyranny. It sells itself on the benevolent precepts of the first form of communism, but denies the obvious fact that man, left to his own devices, is greedy and self-serving, and without living for God, He can only live for himself. So why not get all that he can from this life? And if someone disagrees with you, eliminate him. So we see then in the competing visions that the elemental difference between the two forms of communism is that one is effected through force and the other is voluntary. Set in mid-19th century Paris, The Wandering Jew by Eugene Sue is an exceptional work of historical fiction, depicting with rarefied insight the methods employed by the Jesuits in their intricate system of espionage and subterfuge. It was originally published in 1844, the same year Karl Marx met Friedrich Engels, also in Paris. Knowing Marx to be educated and employed as an agent of the papists, it comes as no surprise to realize that the communism he espoused, the state-enforced communism that inevitably and invariably leads to despotism, was that which mirrored the Jesuit reductions throughout South America during the 17th and 18th centuries, wherein the indigenous peoples were kept as slaves in communes, with their economy under the direction of a central bank, the goods they produced being shipped back to the colonial powers under the auspices of world commerce and trade. Quote-unquote, free trade is nothing new, and the last thing it promotes is the freedom of the lower classes. The other kind of communism, what might now be referred to as libertarian socialism or voluntary communism, the type of communism of the first century church as depicted in the book of Acts, is something in direct opposition to the manipulative tyranny of Jesuitism, whereas modern communism would seem quite in line with it, especially when mixed with corporate fascism, as we see are the blended ingredients of the New World Order. It should come as no surprise then to see the Jesuit Pope from South America advancing the neo-communist agenda of his forebears.
Okay, very interesting, huh? Very interesting.
Built a business that stands in stark contrast to those in the surrounding area, and that his employees are well remunerated for their labor and provided for with quality, inexpensive housing. This, along with the unwillingness of Hardy's employees to turn against their benefactor and join the neighboring workmen in what was essentially union action demanding a redress of grievances against the pitiless lords of commerce exploiting them, has drawn the ire of the workmen of the neighborhood who live in slums paying higher rent for lower wages. At the tavern, their passions are played upon by a Jesuit coadjutor who incites the mob to set off to burn and pillage Monsieur Hardy's factory and the living quarters of his employees. Quoting now from the book. Before, however, we go further in this description, which will probably seem somewhat imaginative, we assert that the wonders we are about to describe are no utopian dreams, but realities in which capital has been safely and profitably invested. To undertake so great and beneficial a scheme as that of providing a large number of human beings with comforts that seem ideal when contrasted with the frightful lot to which the poor are almost always condemned, to instruct them and elevate them in their own esteem, to cause them to prefer intellectual enjoyments to the degrading pleasures of the tavern, where they escape from the consciousness of their miserable destiny, to render them moral and happy by a generous undertaking which is easy of adoption. In short, to take a place among the benefactors of humanity and at the same time make a profitable employment of capital would appear fabulous. Yet, this was the secret of the wonders to which we allude. One of the principal characters in the novel, a young man named Agricola, is then shown meeting his fiancée to show her about the premises of his employment and the living quarters they will soon share. He describes to her the success of his employer's factory and why he is so enthusiastic about his employment there. "Do you know, mademoiselle," said Agricola, "why I am so delighted with the gratifying task I am about to execute?" "I do not, Monsieur Agricola," replied Angelique. to show you this.
I guess what's happening, he's telling us a story about, I guess this is a communist situation. And don't you feel like you're being read a book before you go to bed? I think we got the drift. And I'm going to switch it and find something else for you. Okay, since that Muslim congresswoman denigrated the Jews and blames the Jews for everything, let's see. Jews are the scapegoat of the Jesuits.
Is the line of Japheth. This broadcast is intended to call my peoples back to their covenant obligations in the solemn league and covenant, pursuant to the royal prerogative of Yeshua HaMashiach, who having resurrected from the dead, ascended far above all rule, authority, power, and dominion, for he must reign until he has put all his enemies under his feet. For he is the ruler of the kings of the earth. In doing so, this broadcast will expose the unforgivable treason committed against Yeshua's royal prerogative of the so-called Enlightenment, its offspring, dispensationalism, Arminianism, liberty of conscience, materialism, Darwinism, and their social applications, pluralism, integration, miscegenation, and the communist idea of rights developed out of abolition philosophy in the mid to late 19th century. I'm supposed to be having Eric Phelps on with me today. I'm waiting. There he is, right there.
Hey, here I am, Drake. Sorry I'm late.
Hey, Eric, you with me? All right, very
Yeah,
good.
I'm with you now.
I'm glad you made it. I was listening to your program right when you were ending right there, and I was hoping you were going to get it pretty clean, and you did. So I'm grateful you're here with me.
It's a pleasure to be with you too, Drake.
I follow a number of guys that are part of a kind of a white nationalist movement in the South, and constantly on my Facebook page, I'm seeing stuff about Jews. Everything is about Jews. That's the big problem, they think. And have you ever heard of this guy, Brother Nathaniel?
Oh yeah.
You've heard of
Orthodox?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, the Russian Orthodox.
I'm totally convinced, brother, that he's a Jesuit code Jew, completely.
Why do you think that? Is there
the Jesuits penetrated the Orthodox Church completely.
Oh,
In
yeah.
fact, their patriarch is Jesuit trained.
Okay. Oh, Ware, right? Timothy Ware? Is he Russian? He's not the Russian. He's the he's part of the Greek, right?
I think it was Krill. I think his name was Krill. I have it in my notes here.
Frill?
But
Okay.
this patriarch was trained by Jesuits. So, and I have a book here on the Jesuits. They learned the Eastern Rite, so they could penetrate the Orthodox Church today. The Orthodox Church. The only difference between the Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church is between Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
Yeah.
They're just terrible, oppressing the people. I have a lady friend who was a missionary there, and she told me the Orthodox Church would in Romania told the people that they would have to give their entire wages for the year to get him to do some prayers or whatever it was.
Oh, wow.
Unbelievable. Yeah, and I have a missionary friend there, Pete Heisey, he's from Romania. He told me that the leading Orthodox priest in the town there where he's at, he's the head of the occult. He puts spells on people, and they pay, the people go to the Orthodox priest to put spells on other people. So it's unbelievable. Yeah, incredible.
I want to, my listeners, I want to give you a context of this guy, Brother Nathaniel. I got a clip here from one of his videos.
Renee.
And this is going to be foundational to the conversation that Eric and I are about to have. This is a YouTube. He has a very popular YouTube clip. I see this smothered all over my Facebook all the time, and I've had pretty heated conversations with some friends of mine on Facebook about this guy. So I just want you to listen to a video here that he has put out on Facebook just a few weeks ago. Here it goes.
Europe is the church, and the church is Europe, wrote Hilaire Belloc, the 20th century English historian. But with the dismantling of the church accomplished by the regicide of Charles I, Louis XVI, and Tsar Nicholas II, church and state no longer act as a foil against the intrigues of international Jewry. Today, Europe,
What the
once known
fuck?
and experienced as Christendom, wherein Jews were considered enemies of the gospel, is a secular wasteland. It's ruled instead by the synagogue, with Jews at the highest levels of economic, political, and cultural influence. Okay, so that's the substance of it. Okay, he's wanting everybody to believe that the downfall of the monarchical powers in Europe is behind, and the people behind that are the Jews. And the Protestant, what you get when you start talking to these people, you start digging into their thought process, is that behind the rise of the Jews is the Protestant Reformation.
Yeah.
The Protestant Reformation is what is the platform upon which the Jews have risen to power in the West. They killed off, and supposedly the communist regimes that rise up in France and other areas in Russia. Somehow that's connected to the Protestant Reformation. How they pull that piece of gymnastics off is beyond me. But it's all the communist movements and the revolutions, the American Revolution. It's all connected. It's a Jewish conspiracy for Jews to gain power. Okay, that's what this is about. Okay, that's what these guys think. All right, so we just need to start at the beginning of European history. Eric, can you tell us who were the first international bankers in Europe? Can we talk about
The first, yes, we did. The first international bankers in Europe were the Knights Templars.
Are they Jews?
They ran everything.
Were those Jews?
They're white Gentiles, Frenchmen particularly. Yep. Well, you have the suppression of the Templars in 1312 by the Pope Clement V, and encouraged by Philip the Fair, who was the King of France, and that's why they burned Jacques de Molay at the stake, because he was the head of the Templars. So the Templars were absolutely white Gentiles running the banking of Europe, and not only Europe, because you see the Templars were having a trade around the world. They were the big shippers. Mm-hmm. So, no, they were the first, but there were some Jews that were also bankers at the time, but they were subordinate to the Templars, and they were called the Fuggers. And you can read about them in Ridpath's Universal History.
Okay.
So the Jesuits have done the same thing, because remember, the Jesuits are the new Knights Templars, so they have then sought to use certain Jews as front men to make it look like the Jews run everything. When the fact of the matter is, 10 Roman families are the giga-trillionaires, the big bankers. In fact, the head of the European bank there in Europe, his name was Stragi. He's an Italian Knight of Malta. But nobody talks about him.
Yeah. And folks listening, Eric has made a series of videos. I think one guy put it together in one video. It's called The Jesuit Banking System on YouTube. It's very good. I listened to the whole thing a couple times through. I'd like to document all that, just put it on one page of my website, just to show everyone that the heads of the big banking cartels, not only in our country, Bank of America and all the big banking organizations here in America, not only here but also with the European Union, are white men that are associated or connected somehow with the Knights of Malta or some other Masonic organization.
Okay, so there we go. A little tidbit of Eric Phelps. It reminded me, I was sitting listening, kind of reminded me of going back 15 years ago when I talked to Eric many, many times, and we're talking about the same thing, the Jesuit banking system. I don't think we've made any progress in changing it, have we? But hopefully a lot of progress in letting people know about it. And you know, as well as I do, that there have been rifts and disagreements between Eric and myself and some other people regarding his real motives, and then he questions my real motives. But anyway, putting that aside, there is a lot of good information you can get from him. I would just stop at 2 points. One, creating a white nationalist country, dividing the country up into black and white, and saying that's biblical. You can say anything's biblical, right? And two, his interpretation of how America was formed and some of his thoughts about our founding fathers, I would question those. And that's what really led to me and him not really getting along. But a lot of the other stuff, I mean, there's a lot of good information that you can get. And it was kind of fun just to hear his voice, because I used to sit and talk to him many, many hours and interview him many, many times on my show. And I have to admit, I did learn a lot from him. I just wish he wasn't so hard-headed, or I wish I could be sure that he wasn't working for the other side. You know, say it as it is. And I'm sure he can say the same about me. But anyway, that's the way the cookie crumbles, as they say. But anyway, the Jesuit scapegoat are the Jews. And let me tell you this. One of their real nice followers right now is that congresswoman from Minnesota, the Muslim congresswoman. And we have now, and who came to her rescue was the freshman congresswoman, the socialist, who wants the new Green Deal to be enacted tomorrow. She came to her rescue. Where do you think these people came from? Where do you think they just woke up? And you know how hard it is to get into Congress? You need a lot of money. Where do you think it came from? That's a good question. You can bet she's being counseled right in that tunnel between Georgetown and the White House. She's been on every news station. She's big news. And she wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the Jesuit, Vatican-led New World Order. Back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.